Hey guys, how's it going? I'm EJ, your host here on EJ's Press. I figure we might as well start out with a little bit about me, since you might be wondering, well, who is this guy and what's he got to say? Why should I care? I'm a college student. I'm studying communication, business, organization, leadership, generally stuff that'll actually help me out, once I graduate, because college is a racket, but that's a rant for another day. I am also a writer. I have been telling stories and creating characters and worlds in my head since I was a little boy, about this tall off the desk. I grew up reading and watching Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. I never actually got into Harry Potter until high school. And that was a result of my parents. But regardless, a lot of the fiction I read really stuck with me as a kid. Ninja Turtles, G.I. Joe, everything like that as well. And so when I was a kid, I grew up in a small town in southwest Nebraska called McCook. And we didn't have a whole lot to do. We were homeschooled, so we didn't have a great social circle. We didn't have a tremendous amount of engagement with people our own age, my little brother and I. And so we had two options. We could read books, because we only got an hour in front of a TV screen a day, or we could go outside and play. And so when we'd go outside, we would always make up stories. We would play Lord of the Rings. He would be Faramir and I would be Aragorn, or we would hunt down the orcs, or we would be two Jedi going to take out the battle droids or the stormtroopers, or stuff like that really took a lot of imagination as far as who we were and the world we were in, because we were in a backyard just off of a box canyon in southwest Nebraska. We were not on the Death Star. We were not in Gondor. And so we had to build that with our imagination, and that ability to kind of create worlds always stuck with me. And I'm very glad that it did, because it enabled me to become a writer. And that is kind of my primary escapism now, is reading and writing. And I do play video games now as well, because I don't have that hour in front of the TV limit anymore. But regardless, I used those stories that my brother and I told each other as kids as the basis to create a character all of my own. Beyond the worlds of Star Wars or Indiana Jones or Lord of the Rings. And I should back up. My first foray into actual sitting down and writing something on a laptop was on my mom's work computer. No, correction, my dad's work computer. That he no longer used. He kept the laptop in his little home office, but he never used it. And I used it to write, I think, 30 pages of Percy Jackson fan fiction. Made up my own character, made up my own entire cast. I had a whole plot that was completely just, set in the world of Percy Jackson, but not following the events of the book. But, as I think a lot of writers my age, and probably even younger and even older, I got my start in fan fiction. I got my start writing stories in worlds that I was already familiar with, worlds that other people would be familiar with, and I never shared this with anyone, except my 8th grade English teacher, and we'll come to her in a minute. But I was writing this story, and I got lost in it. I had so much fun telling this story. It's garbage now. I go back and read it when I need a laugh, but it really helped me grow as a person, because it helped me build kind of that diligence to be able to say, all right, I'm done with my homework. I'm home from school, because by that point we had moved to a different town with a better school system. I was no longer homeschooled, so I would come home from school, I'd do my homework, eat dinner, and then in the evening I would have a couple hours to myself to just sit down and write. And that helped build discipline that I wish I could call on more regularly now. And discipline is far more powerful than motivation. And that's a subject for another video. But regardless, I wrote this 30-page fan fiction, and I showed it to my 8th grade English teacher, who I don't think had ever read Percy Jackson. I don't think she recognized it as that, which is probably why she gave it a more positive reception than I was expecting. But she really inspired me to keep going because she liked it. She enjoyed it. Stop that. All right. Anyway, she told me to keep writing. I never did. By that point, my brain had already jumped onto a new story idea, and I came back to it maybe twice. But what was important was that she told me to keep writing. She told me to keep using my creativity to write. And so throughout high school, I kept coming up with these different worlds, these different ideas that now sit in a Google Drive folder labeled Maybe Someday. And it's basically, and hand painting coffee mug, courtesy of my cousins. It's my favorite thing. And so this folder labeled Maybe Someday is kind of an idea mine for me. But anyway, like I said, I wrote through high school. I never really finished anything. I never got even as far as that first fan fiction did in terms of page count. I got better at story progression. I got better at characterization. I just never could stick with a story. And then my senior year of high school, for Christmas, I got 3 books: How to Write Comics, How to Draw Comics, and How to Draw Superheroes, the Stan Lee collection. And those books, it actually started as an art project because I decided, you know what, I'm going to ask my friends at school, hey, I want to make a superhero for you because I want to play around with these books and I want to develop my art skills. Because at the time I wanted to draw comic books. Writing at that point was just kind of a side hobby. It wasn't something that I necessarily delved into as deeply as I used to. But at the time I wanted to draw these superheroes. So I drew one for me. I drew one for 3 or 4 of my best friends. And I started coming up with these stories. I started coming up with this whole origin story and this world that these characters all inhabited. Fast forward to my freshman year of college. These characters, I've still got all the sketches, I've still got all the stories in my head. I've just never done anything with them. They end up in doodles on my homework, on my notes, all that, but I don't do anything with them. And then I got in touch with a writing community online that wanted to do a unified kind of a project to write superheroes, to have several writers come together and kind of make our own superhero universe. We called it Transcendence. And I said, great, I've got all these characters. I can finally get them out and start playing with them. Now, naturally, the world as it was that we made as a group didn't fit all the characters, so I had to kind of rewrite them a little. I had to retool them, kind of rework the origins just a little bit, but it also helped me sit down and write out their stories. And I got in the habit of every Wednesday night. I knew I wouldn't be working Thursday morning, and so Wednesday nights were nights where I would get a big, 4-pack of Red Bull, sit down at my computer and just write till 5 in the morning. Unhealthy decision, don't do it, kids. Find a healthy time to write. Anyway, we had some creator differences, as these projects often do, as a bunch of kids getting together to tell stories often do. But we had a lot of fun, and we ended up separating. We went our separate ways. I still talk with a few of them. I'm still good friends with a few of them, and I still pester him all the time. I'm like, hey, I've got a story idea. Look, tell me, am I right? EJ, go away, please. But we're still good friends. We still get on very well. And I realized I missed writing. We stopped writing, but I didn't want to stop writing. So I said, you know what? I've got these stories. Maybe I could just write it myself. Maybe I can strike out on my own and do this on my own. I can be the writer I want to be. And so I said, okay, we're gonna go and we are going to find a way to turn this little episodic storytelling thing where I would do about 5 pages of writing, break it into 7 chunks and release each chunk once a day, every week. It was a lot of fun. Episodic writing is still kind of where I draw my inspiration when I sit down to process things. It's how I break up my chapters, is each chapter is an episode, as it were. And that's how I think of it in my head. But I had to say, okay, we're gonna take these episodes, we can expand on them now. We don't have to kind of rush through things to get from start to finish of a plot line in 1 week. I can slow down, I can expand, I can develop these characters, I can really grow them out a bit. And it was fantastic. It was great. I loved it. And then I realized it had nowhere to go. I got about halfway through the book, I got about 40,000 words written, and I realized I had no idea where it was going. It didn't have an end. It had no clear villain, which is essential for any sort of heroic storytelling. You need to have something for the hero to oppose. It had no clear message. It was basically just a day in the life. It was slice of life superhero writing that didn't bring anything to the table. It just kind of existed, it was there, and it was really boring. It was not fun. So I said, scrap it. We're gonna find something else. We're gonna do a different thing now. And that summer, a couple things happened. One, that summer, Marvel's Civil War dropped. The movie, not the comic. I'd read the comic since I was a kid. I read that in freshman year of high school. I read Civil War for the first time, and it really stuck with me. But the movie dropped, and I remember we all left the theater. I don't think anybody leaving the theater, for that showing at least, was Team Iron Man by the time we left. But I know for certain my entire family was Team Cap. And so I said, well, that's a great subject. Why not talk about the first natural-born superhero, the first person who's just born with superpowers in a world where where superheroes exist, but they're all super soldiers, they're all Iron Men, they're all the closest thing they have to a natural-born superhero is an astronaut who went to the moon, first woman on the moon. Her crew found this artifact and got her powers from that. Kind of a Fantastic Four thing, except only Sue Storm survives the experience. Anyway, from there, I took this idea and I wrote it out. I got about 2/3 of the way through the book, and then I realized it was rubbish. And so I started again. Kept the same premise, but I realized it was rubbish because I'd lost focus. I had lost that ability to stay on task. The book had again slipped out from underneath me, and it was just going in 17 different directions at once. So again, I had to sit down. I said, we like the idea. We like most of the characters. We like where this is going. It has to be better. It has to stay focused. So from there, that was where that discipline kicked in, where I remembered coming home from school in 8th grade and spending 2 hours writing every night after dinner. And I said, you know what, just the fact that I had that time probably helped. So I started setting aside a time, and I worked through it. I got the book done. I published it. I published through Amazon. I did their Kindle Direct publishing. Saw no success. I think in total the book has sold about 200 copies, maybe, since I released it over a year ago. But it was fun. It was being able to say, you know what, I'm 20 years old. Gosh, I released it 2 years ago. I was able to say, I'm 20 years old. I wrote a book, and it's you can go buy it. And that was exciting to me, but then I realized, oh crap, I'm 20 and I wrote a book. Now I've got to write another one, or I peaked at 20. So I wrote another one. This one went a lot smoother. This one was a lot of fun to write. It kind of followed the daughter of my main character from the first book. It was a lot of fun to write. And by the end of it, I said, you know what, I'm ready to revisit my main character. I'm ready to go back and see how he's doing, check up on him. So I'm currently in the process of writing that. That's on its third draft now. I've restarted it twice because, again, focus issues. I think that second book I got really lucky having a coherent plan to go with from the start that I knew I wanted to explore, whereas the other two have been more general ideas and then I want to explore it. But anyway, that's a bit about me. So yes, I've got 2 books published. I'm working on my third. And yeah, this blog is going, vlog I should say, there's a V now, it's not a blog anymore, it's a vlog. This vlog is going to kind of be my way to communicate with you guys. I can talk about my blog post, because I do have a blog, ejspress.wordpress.com. Kind of talk about some of those blog posts, expand on them a bit. There are ideas that I want to touch on in those that I don't get a chance to because I try to limit myself to 1,200 words or less. I'm sure I can do, as different movies that I enjoy come out, I can do movie reviews of those. I'll be doing updates on the progress of my current work in progress, which does not have a title right now, and that's something I desperately need to fix. But this will kind of be a way for me to ramble and rant and rave about the things that are important to me in the writing world. And that's me, EJ Freeman.